In the past few years, we've watched artificial intelligence explode into the mainstream. AI tools can now write code, generate art, summarize research papers, automate customer service, and even hold human-like conversations. But behind all this innovation, something strange and worrying has been happening across the modern internet. Communities that once felt alive, personal, and deeply human are starting to feel different, quieter, slower, in some cases completely overwhelmed. And recently, one story perfectly captured this shift. AI bots crashing the Linux Mint forums, exposing a much bigger crisis that goes far beyond a single open-source community. To understand why this matters, we first need to understand what Linux Mint represents. Linux Mint is not just another Linux distribution. It's one of the most popular and beginner-friendly desktop operating systems in the Linux world. Built on top of Ubuntu, Linux Mint has always focused on stability, simplicity, and a polished desktop experience. Over the years, it has attracted millions of users who want an alternative to Windows or Mac OS without sacrificing usability. But more importantly, it has cultivated a strong, passionate community. The Linux Mint forums have long been a place where new users ask beginner questions, experienced users share tweaks, developers discuss improvements, and volunteers help troubleshoot everything from driver issues to bootloader problems. Unlike corporate tech support systems, these forums were built on goodwill. People helped each other because they cared about the project. That's the beauty of open source. It thrives on community collaboration. But then, something changed. As AI tools became more advanced and more accessible, automated bots began crawling, scraping, and interacting with forums across the internet. At first, it was subtle. Increased scraping activity, higher server loads, slight slowdowns. But over time, the scale intensified. Large language model crawlers, data harvesting bots, spam automation systems, and malicious AI-driven scripts started hitting forums relentlessly. These weren't just simple spam bots posting fake links. These were sophisticated systems harvesting massive amounts of text data to train AI models or generate content. The Linux Mint forums, like many traditional community platforms, were not built with this scale of automated traffic in mind. They were designed for human conversations, not industrial-scale scraping operations. When AI bots began aggressively crawling threads, downloading archives, and making repeated automated requests, server resources started getting strained. Bandwidth usage spiked. Database queries increased. Page load times slowed. For volunteers managing infrastructure, this wasn't just annoying, it became overwhelming. What makes this situation more concerning is that open-source communities typically operate on limited budgets. Linux Mint is supported by donations, sponsorships, and community contributions. It doesn't have the infrastructure budget of a tech giant like Google or Microsoft. When bots hammer the servers continuously, it translates into real financial and operational pressure. Hosting costs can increase. Performance degrades for real users. Moderators have to spend time blocking IP ranges instead of helping people. But this isn't just about server load. There's a deeper philosophical issue here. The modern internet was built as a network of human conversations. Forums, blogs, mailing lists, and community boards were designed for real people sharing knowledge. Now, those same spaces are being mined as raw material for AI training data. Conversations that were meant to help individual users solve problems are being harvested at scale to feed massive machine learning systems. In many cases, this scraping happens without explicit permission from the communities involved. AI companies deploy crawlers to index and collect publicly available text. Legally, it may fall into gray areas depending on jurisdiction. Ethically, however, many communities feel exploited. Volunteers who wrote detailed troubleshooting guides didn't necessarily intend for their words to become training data for billion-dollar AI systems. The Linux Mint forum situation is just one visible example of this broader trend. Across the internet, forums have reported increased bot traffic. Some administrators have implemented aggressive rate limiting. Others have deployed CAPTCHA systems or blocked entire regions of IP addresses. A few communities have even shut down public access to archives entirely, forcing users to log in just to read old threads. That fundamentally changes the open nature of the web. There's another layer to this crisis: AI-generated spam. Modern AI bots don't just scrape data, they also generate it. Some forums are now flooded with AI-written posts that look surprisingly human. These bots can create accounts, write plausible technical questions, and even respond convincingly. On the surface, it may seem harmless, but over time, this dilutes trust. When you read a forum post today, you can't always be sure if it was written by a real user or an automated system. This erosion of authenticity is one of the most dangerous consequences of the AI bot surge. Communities rely on trust. If users begin to suspect that large portions of content are machine-generated, participation drops. Real contributors disengage. Conversations lose depth. The sense of community weakens. For Linux Mint, whose strength has always been its welcoming and human-focused approach, this is particularly concerning. New users depend on genuine answers from experienced community members. If the signal-to-noise ratio declines, the onboarding experience suffers. That could indirectly affect Linux adoption as a whole. From a technical standpoint, defending against AI bots is extremely challenging. Traditional anti-spam systems were designed to block repetitive links, spam, or obvious malicious scripts. Modern AI crawlers behave differently. They mimic legitimate user agents. They distribute requests across thousands of IP addresses. They respect robots.txt selectively. Some even throttle themselves to avoid detection. Blocking them requires sophisticated filtering and continuous monitoring. But implementing advanced bot mitigation tools often requires resources and expertise that volunteer-run forums may not have. Enterprise-grade web application, firewalls, AI-based traffic analysis systems, and large-scale CDN protections cost money. For a community project like Linux Mint, every additional expense must be carefully justified. This creates a paradox. Open-source communities share knowledge freely. AI systems rely on large-scale knowledge extraction. The more open and accessible a community is, the easier it becomes to scrape. But locking down access contradicts the ethos of openness that defines open-source culture. The Linux Mint forums incident highlights another uncomfortable reality. AI development is reshaping internet infrastructure in ways many communities were not prepared for. When AI companies race to build larger and more capable models, the demand for data grows exponentially. Public forums, Q&A sites, documentation repositories, and code hosting platforms become prime targets. Even if each bot request is individually small, at scale, it becomes massive, and the impact is cumulative. One crawler might be manageable. 10 are stressful. Hundreds become disruptive. Beyond technical strain, there's a cultural shift happening. Historically, when someone had a problem with Linux Mint, they searched the forums, read through threads, and engaged in discussion. Today, many users simply ask an AI assistant. Instead of interacting with community members, they interact with a model trained on community-generated content. The knowledge still originates from humans, but the interaction loop has changed. This raises a fundamental question. If users increasingly rely on AI tools instead of community forums, what happens to the communities themselves? Reduced traffic means fewer active contributors. Fewer contributors means slower responses. Slower responses push more users toward AI. It becomes a feedback loop. The Linux Mint forum crash serves as both a technical warning and a symbolic moment. It forces us to confront the unintended consequences of rapid AI expansion. Innovation is not inherently bad. AI tools can genuinely help users troubleshoot Linux issues faster. But when the systems that power those tools inadvertently strain or exploit the very communities that generated the knowledge, something feels off. We are entering what could be called the modern internet crisis, a period where the infrastructure, culture, and economics of the web are being reshaped by artificial intelligence at unprecedented speed. Small communities are on the front lines of this transformation. Unlike corporate platforms that can absorb increased traffic with massive data centers, volunteer-driven forums feel the impact immediately. Some solutions are emerging. Rate limiting and smarter firewall rules are becoming standard. AI companies are being pressured to identify their crawlers transparently. There are discussions about data licensing frameworks that allow communities to opt in or opt out of AI training usage. Some propose micropayment systems where AI companies compensate communities for large-scale data access. However, these solutions are complex. Implementing them requires coordination across industries and legal systems. Meanwhile, communities like Linux Mint must act quickly just to keep their forums stable. There's also an educational component. Users need to understand that free AI tools are not free in terms of infrastructure impact. When millions of queries are generated daily, the upstream data sources feel that load. Encouraging responsible AI development and responsible data usage should be part of the broader conversation. The Linux Mint forum story is not about fear-mongering or anti-AI sentiment. It's about balance. Open-source communities and AI innovation should not be adversaries. In fact, AI could help moderate forums, detect spam, and assist users. But for that to happen sustainably, collaboration is necessary. Transparency is necessary. Respect for community resources is necessary. If we ignore these issues, the internet could slowly transform into something less human, a place where authentic discussion is overshadowed by automated scraping and generated content. A place where small communities either lock themselves behind barriers or disappear entirely. The strength of Linux Mint has always been its stability, reliability, and community spirit. The forum disruptions remind us that even stable systems can be destabilized by external pressures. It also reminds us that the internet is not just servers and protocols. It is people, volunteers, contributors, users, helping users. As AI continues to evolve in 2026 and beyond, we need a new social contract for the web. One that acknowledges the value of human-generated knowledge and protects the communities that create it. One that ensures technological progress does not unintentionally erode the foundations of collaboration. The Linux Mint forum crash may seem like a niche story within the Linux world, but it is a microcosm of a much larger shift. AI bots are not just changing how we search for information, they are changing how information is hosted, shared, and sustained. And the real question is not whether AI will continue to grow. It will. The real question is whether we can adapt our infrastructure, policies, and cultural norms fast enough to preserve the human core of the internet. Because if communities like Linux Mint struggle under the weight of automated systems, what happens to smaller, less visible forums? What happens to niche hobby communities? What happens to the diversity of voices that made the early internet so vibrant? The modern internet crisis is not a single event. It is a gradual transformation. The Linux Mint forums simply gave us a clear glimpse of it in action. The challenge now is to learn from it, build smarter protections, encourage ethical AI development, and ensure that the next generation of the web remains a place where humans still come first.